What if I told you that most of the things you worry about aren't even real? That the fears keeping you up at night, the anxieties controlling your decisions, the stress that tightens around your chest like a vice, none of it is as solid as it seems. Right now, your mind is probably resisting this idea. You might be thinking, of course, my worries are real. My bills are real. My responsibilities are real. My problems are real. And yet, Eastern philosophy has been telling us for thousands of years that much of what we consider reality is nothing more than a projection of the mind, a fabrication of thought, a veil that keeps us trapped in unnecessary suffering. But here's the real question. If most of our stress and anxiety come from things that aren't real in the way we think they are, then why do we let them control us? And more importantly, how do we break free? Let's start with something simple, something that Eastern philosophers like Lao Tzu, Buddha, and Zen masters have been trying to teach us for ages. Your mind is not reality. Your thoughts are not reality. Your emotions are not reality. They are reactions, interpretations, stories you tell yourself about what is happening. And many of the things you worry about never actually happen. Think about the last time you were anxious about something. Maybe it was a conversation you were dreading. Maybe it was a worst-case scenario playing out in your head. Maybe it was fear about the future. Now ask yourself, did reality match my fears? Did things turn out exactly as bad as I imagined? Chances are they didn't. And even if they did, stressing over them beforehand didn't change the outcome, it only made you suffer twice. The first time in your mind, and the second time in reality. And this is what Eastern philosophy warns us about, the suffering we create out of thin air, the unnecessary burdens we carry, the illusions we mistake for truth.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Buddhism has a word for this, dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but a better translation is dissatisfaction or unease. And here's the kicker: dukkha doesn't come from life itself. It comes from our attachment to illusions. We suffer not because of what happens, but because of how we resist what happens, how we cling to what isn't, how we invent problems in our heads. The Buddha compared the mind to a monkey, restless, jumping from one worry to another, creating unnecessary chaos. And unless you learn to tame that monkey, unless you learn to see through its illusions, you will spend your entire life chasing shadows, worrying about things that don't even exist in the way you think they do. But let's go deeper, because this is where things get truly mind-blowing. Eastern philosophy doesn't just stop at saying, your worries aren't real. It goes a step further and says, neither is the self that worries. And this is where most people struggle, because we cling to our sense of identity, to our thoughts, to our emotions, believing that they define us. But what if they don't? What if the person you think you are, the one who worries, the one who suffers, the one who overthinks, is just another illusion? In Buddhism, there's a concept called anatta, or no self. It teaches that the self is not a fixed, independent thing, but a constantly changing process. Your thoughts come and go. Your emotions come and go. Your worries come and go. So if none of these things are permanent, then who are you really? And if the version of you that is worrying right now is not permanent, then why take its fears so seriously? Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher and author of the Dao De Jing, took this even further. He said, stop thinking and end your problems. Now, at first, that might sound impossible. How can you just stop thinking? How can you just turn off worry? But Lao Tzu wasn't saying to suppress thought, he was saying to stop identifying with it, to stop mistaking the noise in your head for reality, to stop believing that just because a thought appears in your mind, it must be true. Because when you stop clinging to thought, when you stop feeding every worry, when you stop reacting to every little fear that pops up, you begin to see how much of your suffering was never real to begin with. But let's make this practical. Because right now you might be thinking, okay, that sounds profound, but how do I actually apply this? How do I stop worrying about things that aren't real? The first step is simple. Question your thoughts. The next time you find yourself stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, pause. Ask yourself, is this real? Or is this just something my mind is creating? Look at the worry directly. Is it a fact, or is it a story? Is it happening right now, or is it just a projection into the future? And even if it is real, ask yourself, does worrying about this actually help? Or does it just make things worse? Because most of the time, worrying is not problem solving. Worrying is just suffering in advance. And the more you question it, the more you begin to see through it. The next step is even more powerful. Return to the present moment. Eastern philosophy teaches that most of our suffering comes from either dwelling in the past or obsessing over the future. But the present, this exact moment, is always manageable. Think about it. Right now, in this second, are you in danger? Are you in pain? Or is it just your mind pulling you into imaginary scenarios? When you bring your attention fully to now, worries lose their power. Because the present is real. The present is all that exists. The past is gone. The future does not yet exist. And the more you practice returning to the now, the more you break free from the illusions of worry. The final step is the hardest, but also the most transformative. Let go. Let go of the need to control everything. Let go of the belief that you can think your way to certainty. Let go of the illusion that if you just worry enough, you can prevent bad things from happening. Because here's the truth: life is uncertain. Control is an illusion. No amount of worrying will change that. But what can change is how you relate to uncertainty. You can meet it with fear, or you can meet it with trust. You can resist it, or you can flow with it. And when you start choosing trust over fear, when you start flowing instead of resisting, you will realize something incredible. You never had to worry in the first place. So now, the question you have to ask yourself is this: are you ready to see through the illusion? Are you ready to stop living in a world created by worry and start living in reality? Because if you are, then everything changes. You won't stop having thoughts. You won't stop having fears, but they will no longer control you. You will see them for what they are: just passing clouds, just ripples on the surface of the mind. And beneath all of it, you will find something deeper, something unshakable, something real. And that is the part of you that has never been touched by worry, never been defined by fear, never been trapped by illusion. That is the part of you that is already free. And once you see it, once you truly know it, you will never look at life the same way again. If you've come this far, something inside you is already shifting. You've started to see the truth that much of what you worry about, much of what causes you stress and anxiety, is not real in the way you once thought. It exists in your mind more than it exists in the world. And yet, even as you recognize this, even as you begin to question your thoughts, there is still resistance. There is still the feeling that some worries must be justified, that some fears must be necessary, that letting go entirely would be reckless, would be dangerous, would be losing control. But here's the paradox: the more you try to control everything, the more controlled you become. The more you grip tightly, the more fragile you feel. The more you resist uncertainty, the more uncertain you become. And this is the trap, the illusion of control, that fuels endless worry. The belief that if you just think enough, plan enough, stress enough, you can somehow guarantee security, predict the future, avoid all suffering. But what you don't realize is that this very effort is the source of suffering itself. Think about it. How much energy have you spent worrying about things that never happened? How much time have you lost in imaginary scenarios, playing out every possible outcome, rehearsing conversations in your head, preparing for disasters that never came? And even when something does go wrong, did your worrying actually help? Or did it just make you suffer in advance? We live in a world where our minds are constantly creating problems that don't exist, constantly pulling us into a reality that is nothing more than thought. And Eastern philosophy has been trying to wake us up from this illusion for thousands of years. The Buddha called it Maya, the grand illusion, the dream that we mistake for reality. Lao Tzu called it the way of nature, reminding us that life flows effortlessly when we stop resisting it. Zen masters call it the monkey mind, the restless chatter of thoughts that keep us trapped in suffering. And all of them, in different ways, were pointing to the same truth: the only way to be free is to stop believing everything your mind tells you. But this is easier said than done, because we are deeply attached to our thoughts. We believe they define us. We believe they are who we are. And so, even when a thought causes suffering, even when a worry serves no purpose, we cling to it. We feed it. We let it consume us. But here's the radical truth: you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And the moment you realize this, the moment you step back and see your worries as passing clouds rather than absolute truths, you take back control. Not control in the sense of forcing your mind to stop thinking, that's impossible. But control in the sense that your thoughts no longer control you. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do you break free from the illusion of worry? The first step is to see it clearly. The next time you catch yourself worrying, pause. Don't try to push the thought away, but don't try to fight it. Just observe it. Ask yourself, is this real? Is this happening right now? Or is this just a projection of my mind? Because most of the time, you'll realize that your mind is either dragging you into the past or pulling you into the future, neither of which exist in this moment. And when you bring your attention back to the now, the worry loses its grip. The second step is even more powerful: acceptance. Most people think the way to stop worrying is to fight their thoughts, to argue with them, to force themselves to think positively. But this just creates more conflict. Eastern philosophy teaches a different approach. Don't resist your thoughts, but don't believe them either. Let them come and go, like waves in the ocean. When a worry arises, instead of reacting, simply acknowledge it. Ah, here is fear. Here is uncertainty. Here is the mind creating a problem that may not exist. And then, instead of feeding it, let it pass. Like watching a cloud drift across the sky, knowing it is temporary, knowing it is not you. The third step is the hardest, but also the most transformative: surrender. This is where most people struggle because we are afraid of letting go. But we think that if we stop worrying, we will lose control. But the truth is, control was never real to begin with. You were never in control of life. You were only in control of your response to it. And the moment you surrender, truly surrender to the flow of life, to the uncertainty, to the reality that you cannot predict everything, you find something you never expected: the peace. Because peace does not come from certainty. The peace does not come from control. Peace comes from trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in life. Trust that even in the face of uncertainty, even when things don't go as planned, you will handle it. You always have. You always will. But here's where it gets even deeper. When you stop worrying about things that aren't real, when you stop living in the illusion of thought, something incredible happens. You wake up. You begin to experience life directly, without the filter of fear, without the constant mental noise. You start noticing things you never noticed before. The way the wind feels against your skin, the way the sunlight dances on the leaves, the way laughter sounds, unfiltered by thought. Because when you are no longer lost in your mind, you are here, fully, completely, undeniably here. And that is where life is actually happening. Not in the stories in your head, not in the worries about tomorrow, but now. Eki, Bo. So now comes the final question, the question that only you can answer. Are you ready to let go? Are you ready to stop letting illusions control you? Are you ready to stop wasting your life on worries that don't exist? Because if you are, then everything changes. Not because life becomes perfect, not because problems disappear, but because you become free. Free from the fear that has kept you small, free from the thoughts that have kept you trapped, but free to actually live instead of just exist. And once you taste that freedom, once you feel what it's like to move through life without the weight of unnecessary worries, you will never go back. Because you will have seen the truth that most of what you feared was never real to begin with. And in that truth, in that realization, is the greatest freedom of all.